This is a question that was sent to me by a member of Reason Prep. So if you want to try this question yourself, go ahead and pause the video. During a sale, a customer can buy one shirt for X dollars. Each additional shirt the customer buys costs Z dollars less than the first shirt. For example, the cost of the second shirt is X minus Z dollars. Which of the following represents the customer's cost in dollars for N shirts bought during the sale? When we look at the choices and we see variables, this is usually a good sign to plug in. And plugging in is one strategy. So I'll show you that, and then I'll also show you how to do it algebraically, abstractly. Let's start with plugging in. So let's pick some numbers. So let's say the cost of one shirt is, we'll say, $20. Each shirt the customer buys costs Z dollars less than the first shirt. So let's make Z, how about $6 less than the first shirt? So therefore, each additional shirt will cost X minus Z, which is 14. And again, I'm just picking any numbers here, as long as they are reasonable, that they make sense. For example, you'd have to make sure that Z is bigger than, or X is bigger than Z. Which of the following represents the customer's cost in dollars for N shirts? So let's say they buy 10 shirts. Actually, yeah, sure, why not? 10 shirts. What's the cost? Well, for the first shirt, that's going to be what we determined, $20. And for the second through 10th shirt, each of those costs 14. So there's going to be 9 of those. So it's going to be 9 times 14, right? Here's the first shirt. Here are the other 9. 9 times 14 will give me the total cost. So let's go ahead and get the total cost here. So it's going to be 20 plus 9 times 14. So it's $146. So my answer, based on the numbers I plugged in, is 146. When you plug in different numbers, you'll get a different answer. But regardless, we got to go to the choices and see which one fits. So let's plug in our numbers here. So for A, it's going to be 20 plus N minus 1, N is 10. So this is 9. And this cost we already determined is 14. And notice this is exactly what we just did, 20 plus 9 times 14. If you do this math, again, you'll get 146. So that works. How about B? 20 plus 10 times 14. So that's going to be 160, which is not quite right. And I'll talk more about this one in a second because the member had a question about why this wasn't the answer. For C, it's going to be 10 times 14. So it's just going to be 140. Or sorry, yeah, 10 times 14, which is 140. Doesn't match, doesn't match. I'm not going to do it just to save time, but you can test D and E, and they're not going to equal 146. And even if they did, you can just plug in a new set of numbers, and eventually you would narrow down to the answer, which is choice A. So that's plug in. What about the abstract way? And this abstract way is going to kind of lead us to why the answer isn't B and why the answer is A. And it comes back to the title of the video, Don't Double Count. This is a question type that does come up relatively often on the old SAT, where you've got to create an equation based on some scenario, but the key is not to double count. In this case, you don't want to double count the cost of the first shirt. What do I mean by that? Well, let's do this abstractly. What's the total cost going to be for a customer who buys N shirts? Well, the cost for the first shirt is X. That's been determined from the problem. Now, for every shirt after the first, it's going to cost X minus Z dollars. So you don't do choice B, which is this, because N incorporates all of the shirts, including the first shirt. So if you just do X plus N times X minus Z, you're paying for the first shirt, and then you're paying for the first shirt again at the X minus Z rate, in addition to all the other shirts up to N. So why it has to be not that expression, but it's got to be this, because you have to subtract off what the first shirt from your total number of shirts. Remember here it was 9, right? Not 10 times 14, but 9 times 14. And then you multiply that times X minus Z. So when you kind of think about it abstractly, it totally makes sense why A would be the answer. But the key principle is don't double count that first shirt. We have to subtract it off, as we do here, N minus 1. Subtract it from that total, and then multiply it by the cost. And then we add it to the price of the first shirt, which is different. So that's the one little trick to be careful of. So don't double count. You'll see this on questions where they talk about, phone minutes. You spend X number of cents on the first 5 minutes and then X or Y number of cents on the minutes thereafter. You can't double count the first set of minutes. You got to subtract off those minutes, or in this case, subtract off that shirt, so you make sure you don't double count and pay for it twice. To learn more about Reason Prep's SAT, SAT subject test, and ACT video courses, go to reasonprep.com/enroll, and you can find the link in the description below the video.